All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to a Garden Club virtual program. We're so happy to have you here tonight for Transform Downtown's Riverfront. And this is going to be a fabulous program and an important program that I think you'll all get a lot out of. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Denise Reagan. I'm the Executive Director of the Garden Club of Jacksonville. And I'm here with my colleague, Damian Lamar Robinson, our Operations Manager. Hi, Damian.
Hey, how's it going, Denise?
Good.
Good.
And we could not be here without the help of the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund through a generous donation or generous support of the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund has allowed us to put on virtual programs just like this one. And we're so happy to have their support. I would like to introduce our speakers for the evening. First is Nancy Powell. Nancy joined Scenic Jacksonville in February 2020 as its first executive director. Powell most recently completed a 2-year term as board chair of Riverside Avondale Preservation, RAP, and she serves on the marketing committee of the Jacksonville Symphony. Her professional career includes consulting, small business management, and corporate marketing with American Express, AT&T Universal Card, and Media One, the predecessor to Comcast. Thank you for being here tonight, Nancy. I'd also like to introduce Susan Caven. Susan is a longstanding civic advocate and has been a driving force in many nonprofit organizations and is a 3-time Eve Award finalist. She has served many roles with Scenic Jacksonville and is currently the board president. Susan is a member of the Garden Club of Jacksonville Board of Trustees and is active in the Late Bloomers Garden Club and the Garden Club of America. Previously, she was president of Greenscape of Jacksonville, the Jacksonville Historical Society, and the Florida chapter of the National Society of Colonial Dames. She has also enjoyed being active in other community organizations. Welcome, Susan. We also have with us tonight Jimmy Orth. A native of Jacksonville, Jimmy joined the St. John's Riverkeeper as the executive director in 2004. He maintains overall responsibility for budgeting, staffing, program development, fundraising, and public relations. Jimmy has extensive experience working on environmental issues in Northeast Florida for more than 25 years. He previously worked for the Northeast Florida Sierra Club and founded a local chapter of Inner City Outings, a program that provides outdoor experiences for urban youth. Jimmy received his undergraduate degree in marketing from Florida State University and his master's degree in public administration from the University of North Florida. Please, thank you, Jimmy. And if you have questions for the speakers tonight, please post them in the chat along the way. So if a question pops in your head, you don't have to wait. You can go ahead and put it in the chat and we will filter them to the speakers throughout the program. All right. We always like to start off with a poll. And this is a very open-ended poll. So there will be no Zoom poll here. This is just for you to respond in the chat. So when you think about all the places you've been in your life, in your travels, what are some of the best waterfront parks you've ever visited in other cities? And so please pull up the chat box and type in the city name, the park name if you remember it. And as they start coming in, Damian, can you start telling us what kind of responses we're getting?
Oh yeah. It looks like we got Chicago represented twice here tonight. Tampa, Greenville, South Carolina, Mill Creek Park in Youngstown, Ohio, Chattanooga, and San Antonio. I've heard good things about their parks, their waterfront park. Chicago again, St. Petersburg, Cincinnati has a great riverfront. Buffalo, seriously, Chad says. Louisville, Kentucky, and of course, Greenville. One of my favorite parks, waterfront parks, is Falls River Park in Greensville, South Carolina. I had the privilege of being there a couple years ago. It looks like Battery Park, Savannah, yep, River Street in Savannah, San Francisco. Another Greenville person seconding and thirding that one. And Chicago again. So yeah, got a pretty good representation.
Yeah, no shortage of great cities with great parks, right? They just come to mind. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Susan and have her take over and tell us about this idea in Jacksonville. Susan, you might need to unmute yourself.
Okay. I want to thank you, Denise, and the dedicated members and staff of the Garden Club of Jacksonville for presenting so many fine virtual programs and for all the other amazing things that you do for our community. For the past 100 years, garden clubbers have cared about, advocated for, and worked hard to protect and improve Jacksonville's natural beauty, and we appreciate all of that. You are certainly a natural sponsor for this program, which will explore the possibilities of developing a linear park system along the St. Johns River, our public land. And thank you, Zoom audience, for taking the time today to learn more about the Riverfront Parks Now initiative. And today we're going to talk about the vision that many people have of creating downtown parks along our riverfront with well-maintained. I don't start my video. Okay, sorry. Am I okay now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Today we're going to talk about the vision many people have of creating a downtown parks along our riverfront with well-maintained modern amenities where the public can gather and take their family, meet friends, dock their boats, kayaks, canoe, eat lunch at a waterfront riverfront cafe, have fun, enjoy the river. And wouldn't it be wonderful if Jacksonville had a true destination park, a remarkable place to enjoy the river? So we've just had a photograph of the wonderful Memorial Park, which is one of the few places in Jacksonville where the public can walk along and enjoy the river. It is indeed one of Jacksonville's very special places. It is also a beautifully designed as a classic passive neighborhood park. That means it is not considered to be an activated park. So there's no place to buy an ice cream cone. There's no splash pad where kids can play, no restroom. It is not meant to be that kind of park. So Riverfront Parks Now grew out of the Late Bloomers Garden Club effort several years ago to encourage the city to build parks on public land, which is available downtown on the North Bank Riverfront. And then we had the added concern of increased community flooding. So last fall, the Late Bloomers helped organize a resiliency coalition, now made up of many nonprofit organizations, including the Garden Club, thank goodness, Denise, you're amazing, that supports the new city resiliency committee that is chaired by Councilwoman Randy DeFore. Oh, so come April, and Jacksonville started thinking again about parks. And I asked the Scenic Jacksonville board member and late bloomer, Barbara Ketchum, to chair a committee to revisit the possibility of developing an iconic downtown park system. A small group of interested people were gathered together and Riverfront Parks Now was formed. Since then, the idea has rapidly gained momentum, and it is a collaborated initiative supported by Scenic Jacksonville, the Thank You Garden Club of Jacksonville, the Late Bloomers Garden Club, St. John's Riverkeeper, you'll be hearing from Jimmy Orth soon, Greenscape of Jacksonville, who stand ready to help plant trees in the park, and the Memorial Park Association. We welcome you to join us and share your ideas and support this initiative. And please contact us through our website. So there is downtown Jacksonville. And Riverfront Park now asked, why don't we recognize the beautiful natural asset of our city? Why not prioritize our riverfront, which provides outstanding outdoor settings, has unique facilities for leisure activities, nature education, social functions. I mean, you could go on and on. And if the next slide shows the publicly owned properties are outlined in yellow. To have a linear park system, we don't even have to buy expensive private land. It already belongs to us. And it seems to us that Jacksonville has a truly unique, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to turn this downtown, city-owned property into an innovative, interactive, linear riverfront park system, winding from the groundwork, has plans at McCoy's Creek outfall near the Acosta Bridge, all the way down to Metropolitan Park and Hogan's Creek. There's already an active park planned for the riverfront of the Performing Arts Center from the Downtown Investment Authority. Why not continue east on through the landing until we get to Metropolitan Park? We could have a remarkable park designed by a nationally known urban park designing firm, which would absolutely transform this community, be the center of commercial and recreational activities. No other city has a river like the St. John's, and no city has the opportunity like we do today to benefit the residents and attract visitors and businesses to Jacksonville, because by preserving and enhancing open space and creating a cared for gathering spot with restaurants and outlooks over the river and bike lanes, and cities are creating amazing parks all over our country. So we started thinking about it, and we thought, what are the goals what are the things that our successful parks have? And the next slide would be 3 big things. First of all, you have the public. Are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the park has to be for the public. It has to be the community front porch with event space and gathering space and picnic areas and recreation that engages our river. It could be a destination with everyone that attaches everyone to the river, connects the community, and diversifies activities on the riverfront. So you need a place for the public gathering. And you need a place that is a catalyst for economic development when leveraging commercial growth, which happens everywhere public parks are created. And finally, we need the parks protect the city from flooding issues. It's a resiliency feature of cities and is helping cities everywhere, which we are facing rising sea levels every day. And so as we look forward and make our plan, we see these guiding principles that parks all over the country have. To be successful, you need a gathering place, 1, for the community that stimulates surrounding economic development and makes our city more resilient. And 2, the public must be involved in the planning of it, because public input means that the community buys into this concept. It's a shared vision, and everyone has a say in what they want. Every city has a different personality, and they want different things in their parks. So you react to community needs. The third thing is public access. You need parking, you need transportation to get to the parks, you need a place for people to come and be able to gather comfortably. And our city is working on a transportation corridor down Bay Street right now. Fourth is the economic benefits that such a park offers. It's been proven that public parks and open space along the river increase nearby property values dramatically and attracts development and residents too. And they'll also serve, look at this picture, of buffer for floods that protect our city. We know from Irma the effect that a flooding downtown can have. And finally, thought for the Garden Club of Jacksonville, our club was started 100 years ago by a visionary, Nina Kummer, who always emphasized the importance of good planning. This is true whether it's planning your yard or designing the city's riverfront park. A successful park will not be accomplished overnight. It must be planned by professional urban park designers. It is a long process, and so every mayor has to commit to following the master plan. Sustained leadership is absolutely essential in successful parks. And the riverfront parks in other cities have found that the parks they create are so important and so successful, they start looking for more land along the river. So you need an all-over vision. So the question is, what does all this look like? And I'm going to ask Nancy Powell to show us what it is.
Hi. Well, yeah, thanks so much, Susan. And, this started, as she said, kind of around the concept of resiliency. A group of us got together for lunch, started talking about the downtown and resiliency. And we started to say, well, how are other cities dealing with their downtowns and resiliency? And many of you have traveled. I see all the different parks that people have seen in other cities. We've all traveled too. And we started looking at the other downtowns as it relates to parks and resiliency. And so we're going to take you through some of the learnings that we've had. But what's so important is that all three benefits, there's not just one, are present in all of these parks, and all of the newer parks that are being built are really doing some very creative things as it relates to resiliency. And Jimmy's going to talk a little bit more about that. But let's start with my personal favorite, which is Chicago. Next slide. And several of you guys mentioned this. Well, I grew up in Chicago, and this is Grant Park. And Grant Park is not just a park. It's a park within, there are parks within the park. Of course, you have Millennial Park at the corner. You have Maggie Daley Park, which is an incredible, active, young kids oriented park that was built within the last, within the last decade. And this is all, you can see the valuable real estate around the park. This is the front lawn of Chicago, and it's in a constant state of renewal and change. This was not always like this. In the 70s, Grant Park was not the place to be, but it has been renewed and revitalized. It is connected to 18 miles of parks and beaches along the lake trail. And there's also a connection, you can't see it in the picture, of where the stadiums, the planetarium, the museums, and this used to be, there used to be a railroad that went through here. And there is a parking garage underneath this thing. So this was actually the first kind of green roof of a park. So very creative. And what's happened in the past decade, next slide, is the Chicago Riverwalk has been born. This was not there when I grew up. It has about 1.5 miles of different blocks and different rooms of different things that people can do. This, what you're looking at here, is called the jetty section. And it's where they recreated wetlands, and you can learn about the river ecology, but there are other sections with lots of other interesting features to them. And so Chicago is a great example, but what we then said is, okay, we're not Chicago, right? And people say, we're not New York, we're not Chicago. Well, let's look at Detroit. Detroit, this is a 22-acre park that is being built right now. It's opening in 2022, and it's one of many transformational projects along the Detroit Riverfront. They have a Joe Louis Greenway, similar to our Emerald Trail, and this attracts 3 million visitors annually. It was designed by Van Valkenburg Associates, who is also designing the one in Buffalo. I noticed somebody mentioned Buffalo. There's another park in Buffalo that's being designed, and Ralph C. Wilson was the benefactor of this one. So in the next slide, you can see this is a close-up of that park. And again, there's so many creative things that are happening. This one has a fishing pier and a swimming cove, and it has ice skating in the winter time. So they're all, tailored to their specific topography and their specific community needs. In Tampa, somebody has mentioned Tampa. This is the Curtis Hixon Waterfront Park. And what we've seen in these cities is it's not usually one park. There's numerous parks along. And Tampa has a Riverwalk very similar to ours. This park is about 8 acres. So it's on the smaller side of some of these downtown parks, near the Performing Arts Center. So very similar to our landing and along the Riverwalk. But they have a park that we'll come back to across the river that was just opened called the Julian Lane Park, a much bigger park there. So all of these, in the next slide, you'll see the Tom Lee Park in Memphis. Now, my husband's from Memphis. Memphis is a struggling city, and they are breaking ground on this new park this fall. It's 30 acres, and it's comprised of 4 separate rooms. They have like a civic room. They have a community gathering area. You know, Memphis has Memphis in May, and they have big barbecue festivals. So they needed a festival lawn to accommodate a lot of people. But then they also have smaller, intimate areas that have, you know, parks within a park. So that's kind of like the Chicago concept. Even in a smaller park like this, it's not that small, 30 acres, but there is a holistic vision that goes along with it. This one even has what they call a canopy walk, where you're going across treetops. So I'm looking forward to visiting there and seeing that. In Louisville, this is an 85-acre park. They're adding 22 acres in the future. And that's another feature that we've seen, is that people are finding these parks are so successful that they're finding ways to add to them. This park hosts 2.2 million visitors in each year and generates over 40 million in economic impact annually. And across the river from here is a park in Indiana that's being built, and it's 400 acres. And so what they're doing is they're going to be tying these together in a regional impact for visitors and residents. And so all these parks have recreation and enjoyment. They also have economic impact, and most of them are also being built for resiliency today. So next slide is...
Actually, but before we go to the next slide, let's see if we have any questions that have come up so far. Damien, can you check and see if we have a question from the audience?
Yeah, I've checked. It looks like everyone is taking all the information in. They're just soaking it all in. But there is Daniel Ashworth is on here joining us tonight, and he's actually from Memphis while Nancy was talking about that.
Yeah, so I'm sorry to say it was struggling, but their downtown has, they have been revitalizing their downtown. I know they've done a lot to the downtown area as far as making it more all the street friendly aspects to it. We were there a couple of years ago, but one of the reasons why they chose this location, there's Mud Island across the way, but this location is along the riverfront, and so it connects more to downtown, and that's one of their goals, was to have it more cohesive. So connectivity is another theme that we've seen.
That's great. All right, well, Nancy, take it to the next level here.
Okay, so we're still on Louisville, actually. You can see in the next slide, this is that same park, a different part of the park, where they have large gatherings. And in the background, you can see the Yum Center. It's a basketball arena. And so, you know, again, they have an elevated roadway, not dissimilar to our Hart Bridge that is just coming down. And so, but the economic impact is significant. And then at Brooklyn Bridge Park in New York, this is a very creative adaptation of piers. You can see each pier has its own character. It has different features in it. One has ball fields, and the other has more recreational areas. And this is a great example of a combination. You can see the development on the right-hand side of the screen, where this development helps pay for the maintenance of the park. And even the other thing you see is the linear aspect of the parks along the, I'm not sure which highway that is, but it's a combination of the piers and the linear park and the development together. So it's not an either or, it's it's an and for this kind of thing. Cincinnati is one of my favorites. I think it has a lot of similarities to Jacksonville. This was, again, built for resiliency as well. There's a lot of different levels that have been built. There has lots of different aspects to the park. But the next slide, you'll see the similarities in that there are 2 stadiums, not just one. And in between the 2 stadiums is a major development called the Banks. But not only that, but even across the road, as you can see, there's park space there next to the development. And this has flooded, and it's flooded up until the road, and then it has receded. So it was actually kind of built to flood, and they have had floods there. But They do also have restaurants and cafes in the park. Most of them are on the other side of the road, but lots of creative aspects to this park. And in Chattanooga, I noticed somebody mentioned Chattanooga, you know, that was kind of they were one of the first, I think, that really used their river. There was an old industrial riverfront, and they had an effort to revitalize the riverfront, and they've created numerous parks. This one is one of the older ones, the Coolidge Park. And you can see across the river is the Ross's Landing and the aquarium on the other side. And but I am going to turn it over. I think that I'm turning it over to Jimmy to talk a little bit more about the resilient parks or the resilient aspects.
Yes, I just, thanks for having me tonight. Jimmy Orth here with St. John's Riverkeeper and a proud member of Riverfront Parks Now. As you've all seen tonight, parks provide many benefits to the community in terms of health and wellness, civic engagement, recreation, and of course, access to our waterways, which is critical, and also economic development. But cities are also now looking to parks to help resolve problems with flooding and to mitigate the impacts of climate change. One of the cities that has really transformed its downtown is Chattanooga, which is in the next slide. And Chattanooga has utilized a publicly accessible riverfront to really transform its downtown economically, but they're also using parks to make their city more resilient. And this park here in particular is a 23.5 acre park that's located on a former industrial site that was once contaminated. They created a wetland system that now collects and cleans runoff before being released into the Tennessee River and is able to handle a 100-year flood event. So you can see right here and in the next slide as well, you can see that that wetland system that was created to actually provide one, flood control, but also two, it's filtering those storm waters so that they are they're cleaner as they go into the Tennessee River, which was a problem before. The next slide features a park in New York. And after Hurricane Sandy devastated New York in 2012, the city really turned to parks and natural areas along their shoreline to help protect the city from future storms. They're looking throughout the city at ways they can use parks effectively as resiliency strategies. This one, for example, is Hunter's Park. This section of Hunter's Park is actually a 30-acre park. This section is about 11 acres. It's located on an old industrial park, an industrial site that now more closely resembles the floodplain marsh that once existed here. So they actually recreated essentially what was here before it was an industrial area. The park created on this post-industrial waterfront site is now an 11-acre model of urban ecology and resiliency. Bulkheads were removed, wetlands created, and a bioswale was also incorporated into the site to manage and treat stormwater. The next slide is it's really the holistic vision that was created by Boston, Resilient Boston Harbor. And this vision and plan is looking to redesign waterfront parks, restore marshes, and even retreat in some situations from the shoreline in cases where it's necessary to actually remove structures, remove housing, remove buildings, and create more natural areas to create flood protection, buffers from storm surge, and improve access and recreation. They too, as a community, recognized how vulnerable they are to sea level rise. So they're looking to their natural infrastructure that they already have in the city in terms of parks that are existing, but also maybe wetlands or opportunities to restore wetlands in marsh areas to help provide that buffer and that protection from storm surge. The next slide will show you also, and this is a slide too, this is a close-up view. If you go to Resilient Boston website, you can see where the specific plans that they have for each community and each section of Boston. It's really fascinating to see how comprehensive this plan. This is actually a specific project where they're incorporating green space, but also raising structures to prepare for sea level rise, and connecting this in also with the greenway so that it's an interconnected, like we've been talking about, a network of parks and green spaces throughout Boston. Another strategy that's being used by many cities is the incorporation of underground cisterns to capture stormwater. Actually, this park, Cumberland Park in Nashville, has an underground cistern under this park that is able to capture about 1 million gallons of stormwater a year, which is pretty remarkable. So all of these folks that are playing, they're essentially enjoying themselves, recreating right there on top of a cistern that's capturing that stormwater, holding that stormwater, and helping prevent flooding in the city. Cumberland and the adjacent Riverfront Lawn and Landing Park. Also, I would like to mention that as we keep talking about resiliency, but it's the co-benefits that I think we have to really focus on that provides the return on investment in these parks. And this park and the adjacent Riverfront Lawn Landing Park have helped generate $1 billion in new investment within just 2 blocks of the boundaries of these 2 parks. Another feature is also that many parks are now being literally designed to flood. And actually, Smale Park in Cincinnati, which was featured earlier, was an example of one of those parks where they actually recognized that it's built in a floodplain, flooding is going to occur, and they decided to embrace that feature, that the reality that it will potentially flood. This park in Houston is a great example of that. It's a 160-acre linear park that it actually was just essentially it was a drainage ditch before they did restoration on the creek. And now this park not only provides outstanding recreational opportunities, but also helps protect the surrounding areas, communities, and business areas from flooding. The flooding capacity was increased, and park elements are actually built to be submerged during future floods, requiring cleanup rather than reconstruction. And they saw this in previous flooding events where they've had their parks have literally been nearly destroyed by flooding. In this case, everything is designed, including the building you see where there's a cafe, is designed to flood so that as those flood waters recede, that it's ready to be used once again for recreation and to entertain the public. So in other words, this park is really designed to work with nature and not against it. And you're seeing that trend all across the country. So I think what I'll end this section with is just by saying that, we all as a committee, a group of Riverfront Parks Now, we really spend a lot of time evaluating iconic parks in so many other cities, as you've seen. This is just actually a sample of the ones that we have looked at. And what I think I could say safely for all of us is that we were all struck by the numerous co-benefits and significant return on investment that parks can provide to not only our community, but are providing to so many other communities. And I think that's the thing that we really feel like is the real benefit here. There's not just one benefit. We can't just look at parks like we have maybe done traditionally in the past as providing recreational benefits alone. They provide so many other benefits to the community. And so what we've seen and studies have borne out is that parks can provide a tremendous return on investment for a community. They're essentially what people are starting to come to recognize is they really are essential infrastructure for communities and for downtowns. And I'll end it there and we can go on to the next section, which I think you have a poll coming up. Is that right?
Right, we do have a poll. Thank you for saying that. So, gosh, I just want to get in my car and drive across country to all of these cities and enjoy the parks right now. But first, we're going to have a poll, and this is an actual poll I'm going to do. So, what amenities would you like to see in Jacksonville's downtown parks? So, go ahead and see if you can, choose the things that you like. And if you don't see your idea here, go ahead and type it in the chat.
You can select more than one, right, Denise?
Yep. So we've had about 30% voting. Let's see if we can get it close up to the 80 to 90%. By the way, we do have 103 participants in tonight's program. It's pretty exciting. And let's see, we've got about 70 people have voted, getting up into that 75%. We'll give it about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And Damien, tell us how people voted.
Well, obviously, overwhelmingly, and not because it's summer, but Jacksonville, you guys have spoken, and all of our attendees, 95% of you said shade. More shade is needed in our parks, followed by walking trails, which would be good, and seating comes in at the close third, and water features. So I'm all for that.
That's great.
All of the above.
Any fun answers in the chat?
Yeah, cafes and coffee. Yep, docks for boats. How about some bike trails and other natural art in some of the public areas? Bird watching stations, native plants.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for all the feedback.
Susan always likes to say, I want to buy an ice cream cone while I'm walking on the river. So I want to get Susan that ice cream cone. All right. So Nancy, I think you were going to talk about amenities at some of these parks.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, and I also want to just say before we get into this section, there was a few questions about, how do we manage our parks? How do we maintain these parks? We can talk a little bit more maybe at the end. But one of the things we found is, all these commonalities between all these parks is that a lot of times there is a dedicated nonprofit, a conservancy group, the Friends of the Chicago Riverwalk, their Memphis Parks Partnership. There's a number of them that become dedicated for that park because of the importance of those parks downtown. And it's a public-private partnership like Memorial Park Association works with the city of Jacksonville and the Parks Department. So that's one commonality. And the other commonality is that it's funded by a variety of sources. There's state grants, there's federal grants, there's private philanthropy, and then there's city funding also. So, and again, there is a wide range of different types of funding. So we can talk some more about that, but let's go to the fun stuff on the amenities. And so going back to Tampa, this is the park that was across the river from the Curtis Hixon Park. It's an old park that was revitalized, opened up in 2018. And you can see here, there's a performance boathouse there in the corner. And again, the roof is sloped so that it goes down into a rain garden. And there's a floating dock here where this little cove serves as a learning opportunity for people who want to do paddle boating or crew, but it also has competitive boat races, and the boat house is also rented out at night for like weddings and things. Now this park is an active park. It also has obviously nice trees. They kept these old trees for shade. And then they also integrated public art. Next slide. You can see the public art, which also serves kind of as a shade structure. So very creative. You can see the boathouse in the background and how beautiful it is at night. My daughter lives in Tampa now, so she says it's a great wedding spot. And this park also has ball fields and tennis courts. And what happened is, and this is the other theme, is that the people who are helping to create and design the parks is they do extensive community input as to what people in that community want. And so that's where, we see all of these great parks, but we want to know, what do people in Jacksonville want? And that would be part of the public process that Susan talked about earlier. In St. Pete, again, my daughter lives here, so I was able to visit this new pier. It just opened in about a month ago. It was an old pier that has been rebuilt a few times, but it was part of what struck us about St. Petersburg is that they have a master plan that was started in the early 2010s, completed in 2015, and they have 7 riverfront park districts, waterfront park districts, and the Pier District is just one of them. And so this one has several restaurants. It has a discovery center. It has fishing piers. And the next slide, you can see this is a wetlands area. So they've created natural areas as well. Again, this is 26 acres. So it's not just a pier, it's a park. And the next one. And so, you know, places to sit. In the background, you can see the pink. It's this amazing public art that looks really cool at night. There's a little, not everybody loves it during the day, or at least that's the early read on it, but it's a very amazing thing. And so again, these shade trees here, right in the middle of this pier. And they have a place for kids to play and sit and enjoy the water and enjoy the view of the St. Petersburg. So this was just built and they expect an $80 million economic impact every year from this pier.
Nancy, I wanted to mention, I was just in St. Pete a couple of weeks ago and visited the pier, which was doing gangbusters, even in the middle of the pandemic. Lots of room for social distancing. And there's an old beach right next to this pier that used to be abandoned. It was never used, and it was being used for I was there with friends who lived just a couple of blocks away, and they said, I've never seen people here before. So that was kind of cool that, you know, this beach that was kind of abandoned was suddenly getting used by kids.
Yep. Okay, so but this is back to Cincinnati, and here's an example of a water feature that is also like a stream and a place for people to play. And you know, this is Cincinnati, where you know it gets cold in the winter, but they feel that you know children and water and safe water, so that it's easy to play with. And this was just a cool example, and they have many other examples here with a climbing wall and other features. So, you know, the whole kids room area, the kids play structures are so much more than just regular playground equipment these days. This is my personal favorite is, you know, swinging benches along the riverfront to just sit and enjoy and have beautiful landscaping along the riverfront. And our river walk is great. And it could be one of the visions we have is to have it, you know, greener and more, you know, maybe more of a promenade, maybe a little wider than it is, so that, you know, it has that linear park in a connected series of parks. So it's not just one park, even though a destination iconic park is part of what most of these cities have decided has really attracted people. And it also helps for people who live downtown. And we know downtown wants more residents, and this would make a more livable place, but it also brings in people from other areas. Now, Tulsa, Oklahoma has a $465 million park. It's just a little bit over the top, but this is an example of an incredible play area there. They have built this park for the people of Tulsa. They do have a benefactor, so they had one person who basically helped build the entire park, or helped the city build the park. So, you know, between all the examples, we felt like, you know, if all these cities have figured out how to do this, we can figure it out. And so we feel like, let's see, where are we? Oh, do we want to stop here, or are we just going to go into the next steps? The next steps really are, you know, we feel like developing our community vision. What we've been working on since, this is an example of what Van Valkenburg Associates, they're one of the top firms that do this work in urban places. And, you know, they have a structured process to really get community input along the way, very many places along the way. So we would love to see a vision of, you know, kind of the whole riverfront, and then, you know, diving down into which exact lands make sense for us. We know the public lands along the North Bank. There's some on the South Bank, but not as many public lands on the South Bank. We do want to connect the two banks, and we want people's input. We feel like, you know, there's a lot of times what happens is that things are decided and presented, and we do have places where there've been public process, but we really feel like that's an important part of the process. The Emerald Trail, everybody's aware of the Emerald Trail. They've done an awesome job of doing the design work, a master plan, And now it's being implemented. It's starting this fall. We are in full support of the Emerald Trail, and we feel like between people using the trail and getting downtown, you can see the multiple places where you can get downtown from the Emerald Trail. Wouldn't it be great to have a riverfront park there? Conversely, if you're at the Riverfront Park, you can rent a bike and get on the trail. And so this is a complementary program. We want to see that go full speed ahead, but most of the cities we've looked at have both. They have the trail system and the park system along the river. So it's a long-term vision, and we feel like they are totally complementary. So it's really a riverfront for all. We end with this slide because this is where, again, most of the public land is already. We don't have to purchase land somewhere. And the network of dynamic, vibrant green spaces that would be a catalyst for economic impact and attracting residents and businesses, protecting our river and protecting our downtown from flooding and sea level rise, and really importantly, bringing the community together, having shared experiences, having a place where we can have the jazz festival or other things, other community gatherings. And there is a whole, social equity component to this, because you don't have to have a boat, you don't have to live on the river. You can enjoy the river at all times, 365 days a year. It would be a strategic investment for the community, and also health and wellness. Here we are in COVID and needing places to be outside and enjoy them. So that is our vision, and we are so happy you have joined us. We are looking for, a broad community support, because community support is critical as it relates to talking with city leaders, which we have been doing. We have been talking with a variety of people, trying to gain excitement for this concept, because what we see is that there have been efforts in the past that haven't come to fruition. We would love to see this come to fruition with your help.
All right, and with that, we're going to kind of get your juices flowing. We've already got a lot of questions that are out there, but we thought we'd go ahead and do an actual poll that gets at what you're looking for. So what would you want in a downtown park system? What are you most looking for? And this is multiple choice, so you can answer multiple things, but if you had to pick one or two, what are the things that are most important to you? I want them all, of course, because we deserve them all. And of course, we know from these examples that all of these parks are performing multiple functions at the same time. So you don't really have to choose. All right, so we've got about 70% have voted. We'll give it another couple of seconds here. And we'll end the poll there. Damien?
Hello.
What are the
All
goals?
right.
It's fairly even.
Yes, coming in at number one, building a more resilient downtown, which is at 70%, followed by creating equitable river access, and providing fresh air and exercise are also important. And then people also want to see the economics, the development of the economy stimulated. So that's good. And then in the chat, there's some extra comments coming in as well. Equitable access, again, beauty, historical and cultural learning opportunities are really important, and gardens, of course, more gardens. So yeah.
All right. So we've come to a part now where we would like to have your questions for our speakers. So there's been lots of questions. One of the main ones I saw come up again and again was, how will we fund this?
Yes.
And particularly with, the city has shown little desire to increase our tax base. So Nancy, Jimmy, Susan?
Well, you know, I would say, yeah, on the funding piece, it's interesting. You know, I've actually included a little bit of this in the chat, but so many of these other communities, I think the benefit of this park, especially if you develop a shared vision that involves the public, it really brings people to the table to want to invest in these type of projects. And so what we've seen so time and time again in other cities is it's a public-private partnership where, yes, maybe local government's providing some of the funding, but it's also involves fundraising from the philanthropic community and from private investors, donors, I should say, and also grants. There are a lot of grants available out there, especially now, in particular for resiliency and other things like that. So I think there's the benefit is there's a lot of opportunities. And I think, you know, we always say, well, there's not enough money to go around. Well, the city was also proposing giving $233 million in incentives to Lot J. So I think if we can come, and a large proportion of that was direct contributions. It wasn't just rev grants. And so I think that if we can find the money to subsidize private development, we can also find the money to build essential infrastructure like parks.
Yeah, and I would just add that, you know, different cities have different propensities to fund their parks. There are some cities that have, you know, a dedicated park tax. We don't think that would fly here in Jacksonville today. Maybe it would in the future, because dedicating funding sources is important. But, you know, back to Jimmy's point, it's a combination of things. And what struck us, though, is that all of these mid-sized cities have figured it out and funded it. And so if they can do it, we can do it. Do we have all the answers today? No. Have we started to, you know, look at foundations and corporate support? We are making those. We're trying to make introductions or talk to people right now. Getting some city champions. So, you know, asking your city council person to support this effort would be important, because they're just, you know, it's becoming, it's really, we've been very pleased with the response so far, that people are getting excited about this. And so the more people who talk about it to your city council person, we are out talking to city council today. And we feel that between, you know, capital investment, they do capital investments every year. And it wouldn't be all city funded though, you know, even though St. Petersburg pretty much funded their own, most of it. The public art was privately funded, but most of it was public. But then like Cincinnati, they had like a large grant. The Chicago Riverwalk was started with a Department of Transportation grant, like of a lot of money. And so we would need to figure out, and the grants could be for a many number of things, right? You've got resiliency grants, you've got social and equitable grants, and you've got health and wellness types of things. You've got, so we feel like it's possible. It is, most of these parks cost about $2 million per acre to build. So, you know, like Memphis's 30-acre park is $60 million. Some of them are much higher, depending, you know, Chicago's Millennial Park was out of the park. So again, there's a lot of work to be done, and we are really at the stage of you know, working to gain community support for this concept, because without community support, nothing, you know, it won't happen. But with community support, we feel it definitely can happen, and we want to see it happen.
Yeah.
Nancy, on there's a question that came in, I think that would sort of dovetails into what you're talking about now. Victoria in the chat asked, who are the political champions or any elected officials, chamber or civic council that you know of right now through Scenic Jacksonville?
Yeah, we are, well, we are talking with, I don't know that I could say who's the champion of this concept, except that we know that Councilmember Carlucci has been very much an advocate of the Metropolitan Park. Some of you are aware that there's an issue with Metropolitan Park and the city trying to get access to it for development, and the shipyards development. So, you know, we're talking to the DIA, we're talking to Councilmember DeFore, we're talking to Mayor council member Zuri, went out on leave. So we started really in July talking to our city leaders, and we are continuing to do so. So.
And Damien,
We will.
can we touch on that real quick? Because I know you got other questions, but I think what's really interesting to keep in mind is, one, I think we're really trying to warm up a lot of the elected officials to a new way of thinking, frankly, because if you think about how we've done business in Jacksonville historically, it's been piecemeal development. We really don't like, we haven't, and we're not real fond of plans, because so often plans end up on shelves. But what we're talking about is a plan that actually gets implemented and that actually prioritizes public access over private development. We see private development will actually benefit in the surrounding areas around the park. And so this is a completely different way of thinking about private or publicly owned lands, and how those lands are developed, with putting the public at the forefront and the priority in the process. And so I think that's one of the things we're trying to do, is get people to warmed up to this whole idea. It's a different way of thinking in Jacksonville, frankly.
Yeah. Well, while you're on the subject, Jimmy, one other question in reference, because this came in a lot. We're getting a lot of questions in reference to flood measures, and this one specific question was very specific. So this came in from Kathleen. The parks featured all have natural embankments along their waterway. Broken pieces of concrete look far less inviting. Can the St. John's Riverkeeper talk about the importance of natural embankments and the impact of flooding, since we are talking about riverfront parks?
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think, what we really saw during Hurricane Irma is how vulnerable this city is. And so, if you really think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to put more private development right along the banks of the river. What we have right now, even in its natural state as it currently sits, without doing any enhancements, we have some great buffers, frankly, for storm surge, and provide a buffer for the city of Jacksonville from future storms. So I think we're in a good position, and we have the opportunity to actually develop this park in a way that you have natural shorelines that can provide habitat for wildlife, but also can be that buffer for sea level rise and help protect the surrounding economic development that will naturally accrue around the boundaries of the park. And so we think that living shorelines and natural infrastructure along our riverfront is the right way to go. And so many other communities have really embraced that and recognized that what they call gray infrastructure, which is the hardening of shorelines, is not always the best approach.
Yeah. So that brings up like several of these areas, publicly owned areas, may have had some kind of hazardous waste, issues that need to be remediated. And I'm sure that this is a story that, any city across the country, this has probably been dealt with. So I just wonder what you know about these lands that we currently are talking about, and then if you know about other cities and how they handled maybe similar problems.
Well, I think a great example is, frankly, the park, Renaissance Park in Chattanooga that we featured, where they created the enhanced wetlands to do filtration. That park was actually a brownfield and was contaminated. And so they were actually able to take an existing contaminated parcel of land that was a brownfield. That's what they typically call these these post-industrial properties that have contamination from previous industrial activities, and convert it into a really successful park that now actually provides an environmental benefit to the community and to wildlife. And so it can be done. Certainly, we have some contamination issues on the shipyards that'll have to be addressed, but it's been proven it can be done in other cities, and we can do it here in Jacksonville. And there's grants, frankly, that help to remediate brownfield properties as well.
Well, and also, Metropolitan Park was also, contaminated, and it became a park. So, maybe the standards in 1984 weren't the same as they are, but today it's got beautiful trees that are growing on it, and it's got the bones of a park without probably a lot of need. It depends on what you're going to do there. If you're going to put a slab on it to put a restaurant, or, if you're going to build a high rise, you've got to go down. There's a lot of, it depends on what you're going to do with the park. And so we think it's definitely feasible to transform those lands into parks, because we've seen it done.
I think the Jacksonville Arboretum is an example of that as well. That there's a lot of, remediation that happened by, allowing it to become natural again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Damien, do you have some more questions to pose?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some great feedback is coming, of course, with questions, but this question came in from Karen Brune Mathis. She's asking how do parks accommodate parking for visitors? And I know you touched a little bit on that, Nancy, earlier, because it really is specific to the park and to the environment itself. But what
Yeah,
are some ideas?
It's funny because several parks have underground parking. And now whether our topography would allow for that, I don't know. But St. Louis Park has underground parking. The Cincinnati Park has some underground parking, and so does Chicago. Now, if you can't do underground parking, you've got to plan for parking. And what we see is that it really doesn't make sense to put any parking along the riverfront. Maybe it's across Bay Street, maybe it's across, we do have a number of parking garages downtown, whether they're located in the right places or not. So it depends on, where they are, but we do have parking nearby, and that does need to be planned for as part of the, bathrooms, all of those kind of necessities definitely have to be to plan for something to work.
And I think also the whole idea of what we're proposing is really a connected network of parks, so that it enhances downtown mobility. I mean, you're going to have potentially, if this concept were realized, I mean, you would have access all the way down the riverfront for biking, walking. And so I think it really enhances the opportunities for people to get out and, and for pedestrian traffic, as opposed to necessarily just relying on cars. And of course, we have lots of places downtown to park in parking garages where you can park and then go and access the parks.
Yeah, or Lot J right now has, a lot of surface parking lot that's mostly not used. On game days it is. But yeah, the mobility piece of this, and this is where the Emerald Trail comes in too. It's going to really increase the mobility amongst, to be able to ride your bike down all over the downtown and then across the river too, to the South Bank. The pedestrian bridge is going up. It's going to be done next year. We'd love to see something else closer, to the Main Street Bridge that's a little bit more pedestrian friendly. That could be another phase of the project.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of people, and I always remember this with Jacksonville, because I think a lot of people forget the size of Jacksonville. There was an article back in 2013, I believe, in Mapping Jacksonville. And it talked about how many major cities you can fit inside the landmass of Jax. And you can fit 11 major cities. Chicago was a city you can fit, Manhattan, Miami, several major metropolitan cities all fit inside Jacksonville. So we have quite a bit of areas that I think we can manage, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So one of the major questions that people have is, how do we help make this happen? Like, what? Give us some orders. Give us some steps to take.
Well, there's a couple of ways that you can help. Is one, I think it's just a matter of reaching out to your city council members and just letting them know that you support this concept. I think two, the DIA is going to play a critical role in this. Matter of fact, they've just issued a RFP to update the CRA, and also within that develop a master plan for downtown parks. But it's not a comprehensive, the scope of work is not extensive enough. It doesn't, for instance, it does not include the shipyards and metropolitan park, yet it's going to be a master plan for downtown's parks. So I think we need to lobby the DIA to say, we need to to really think through this holistically, so that we're looking at the entire waterfront, and that we're developing a master plan that involves the public in that process. And so I think that's something right now, is to really encourage the DIA to expand the scope of work in terms of a master plan that they're currently envisioning, and to involve the public in that process so we can have a shared vision.
And at the same time, we're just kind of putting our heads together. We welcome anybody's ideas. I love all of this chat. I'm going to go back and look at everybody's suggestions after this as to, you know, what are your ideas for how we can move forward. We join one of our mailing lists, any of our organizations' mailing lists, or follow us on Facebook. We do have a small Riverfront Parks Now website. It's a one-pager, so it's not super extensive because we're not a registered nonprofit together. We're kind of a group of nonprofits that are together. So we're trying to figure out what that structure looks like, how we can get the, you know, take these next few steps to really start to make this a reality, between funding, you know, master vision of the idea and political support. And so we're working along all of those areas. But stay in touch with us. We will, as you may have seen before, you know, we will send out alerts when there are critical meetings that need to be, where we need public support. You know, not too many people come to these city meetings, especially the committee level, and those are where things really happen. So we will, you know, keep you informed of those critical points, because we really do, we're forming that kind of next steps right now. So keep your ideas coming. You can talk. I'm kind of the key, contact Nancy at scenicjax.org if you, and we can put you in touch. You know, we can carry your ideas forward also.
That's great. Thank you, Nancy. And yes, please visit riverfrontparksnow.org. And I believe there's a, you can sign up for, to get email newsletters so that, you know, you'll stay informed and know what to do next. So please do that. I want to thank Nancy, Susan, and Jimmy for being our speakers tonight. Everybody give them a virtual round of applause because they were great. And this is an idea whose time is, you know, beyond time has come. And we're ready to get on board and make it happen. I want to talk about a couple of other programs that are coming up for the Garden Club of Jacksonville. We are about to start doing some hybrid programs, which means we're going to do some things in person and online at the same time. And the first one of those is going to be a horticulture program called Microgreens. It's with Jalen Goss of Lunar Harvest. She is an urban farmer who has taught herself the fine art of growing microgreens, and she'll be here at 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, September 1st. And I'm going to ask Damien to put the information about that program in the chat, so you can just click on that and go straight to that program and sign up. And you can either sign up to come in person. We're going to have a very small, intimate crowd of people in person, and then you can also just see it online. And so you can choose which way you'd like to see that program. We also are planning our Nina Cummer birthday picnic. Nina Cummer, one of our founding members, her birthday is October 16th. She'll be celebrating her 145th birthday on October 16th. And so we want to celebrate and remember her. And so October 16th, 3 to 8 p.m. And you can register for that. And Damien, if you would, please add the link for that program. And we're going to have live entertainment. We're going to have some catered snack boxes that you can order ahead of time or get that day. We're going to have a sale going on at that time as well. And you can just kind of stroll the grounds, look at the river, and enjoy some outdoor time, and just a way to get out of the house and do something a little different. The sale that I mentioned, we have a lot of items that we're trying to liquidate. And so we're having a garden boutique sale that's going on that week. So October 15th, 16th, and 17th. And Damien will add the link for that to the chat as well. We'll be selling all sorts of cool stuff, lots of garden tools and implements, accessories, scarves, jewelry, books, lots and lots of different kinds of books. So it's a great time to stock up on maybe a gift that you need to get for the holidays. Always good to shop a little early, particularly now when you might have to send it in the mail. All right. Also, I'd like to mention that if you're not a member of the Garden Club, please consider becoming a member of the Garden Club of Jacksonville. We can't do programs like this or either online or in person without the support of people like you. So we really appreciate your support. And Damien, if you would, please add the link about how you can become a member of the Garden Club. Also, we like to do surveys of all of our programs. We want to know what you think. We want to know what you thought of the content of the program, what you thought of the speakers, and what kinds of ideas you have for programs in the future. So please let us know, and we really appreciate that. And you'll be getting the link in this chat. We'll also send it out to everybody afterward in case you miss it. But please take the surveys. They really help us. We use them all the time to help us create better programming for you. I would like to thank the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund one more time for their support, for bringing programs like this to all of us. And I want to thank all of you out there for coming to this program. If it weren't for you, we'd be talking to ourselves. So we're really happy to have you on board. And I want to thank my colleague and partner in crime, Damien. Thanks for being here.
We're partners in dirt.
Partners in dirt.
You know, we grow things at the Garden Club.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate you coming out tonight, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.